In the previous episode, we discussed one of the greatest kings of Israel, King Solomon. He was a wise and powerful ruler who extended the influence of Israel far beyond its political borders. Unfortunately, after Solomon's death, his son Rehoboam did not step up to his father's legacy. Rehoboam almost instantly destroyed what his father had worked for in his life. Opposite to his father, Rehoboam was unwise and started listening to the friends of his youth, rather than the advisors that Solomon left for his guidance. Rehoboam quickly taxed the northern tribes of Israel so heavily that they rebelled and separated themselves from Judah. The kingdom became divided into Israel and Judah, having their own kings, capitals, and worship centers. The capital of Judah, Jerusalem, gradually started to lose its significance internationally and had many kings that led the Jewish people into idolatry. Certainly, the downfall of Judah would be much quicker if not for the good kings that fought for the restoration of pure worship. One of such kings was Hezekiah, the son of Ahaz, and the 13th king of Judah. He is considered a very righteous king in both the Book of Kings and the Book of Chronicles. He is also highly regarded by Christians as he is one of the kings of Judah mentioned in the genealogy of Jesus recorded in Matthew's Gospel. According to the Book of Kings, no king of Judah among either his preceders or his succeeders could be compared to him. So what made Hezekiah so special? I chose Hezekiah specifically because he had a huge impact on the shape of Jerusalem as we know it today. If you have a chance to visit Jerusalem, there are physical pieces of evidence of Hezekiah's rule that you will be able to see today. Because of the limited space in the city of David, people started to settle outside the city walls. The population of Jerusalem grew, and the people needed new space to build their homes. Quickly, new homes started to pop up on the western hill. Especially after the destruction of the northern kingdom by Assyria, refugees fled to live in Jerusalem. Hezekiah, understanding the need to protect the people from the dangers of invaders, builds a massive 7-meter wide wall around the new neighborhood. What is astonishing is that today you can see the uncovered parts of this wall in Jerusalem. In this modern picture of Jerusalem, you can see 3 walls. The yellow line represents the wall surrounding the city of David. The blue line represents the wide wall built by Hezekiah. Lastly, the orange line represents the 16th century wall built by Sultan Suleiman I. You can also see a red mark representing the Hezekiah wall uncovered part, which you will be able to see today in Jerusalem. Nevertheless, this is not the only extraordinary find connected to Hezekiah walls. In the biblical description, we learn that Hezekiah destroyed the people's houses to make space for the new wall. The prophet Isaiah negatively describes this action. In Isaiah 22, 9-10, we read,
Then you counted the houses of Jerusalem. Moreover, you tore down houses to fortify the wall.
In the uncovered piece of Hezekiah's wall, you can actually see the remains of destroyed houses that made space for the new wall. Another important construction project by Hezekiah was the creation of the Pool of Siloam that provided water for the growing population of Jerusalem. The Pool of Siloam became very important in Jewish tradition. and it is also visible in the New Testament description of Jesus' ministry. In the Bible, we read a lot about the creation of this water reservoir. This project was possible thanks to creating a new water tunnel that would direct the water from the Gihon spring to the pool of Siloam. I was actually thinking about making a separate 3D illustration on the Hezekiah tunnel, but the City of David made an excellent presentation on this topic. Therefore, the graphic I will use now comes from the official YouTube channel of the City of David. I include the link to their channel in my video description if you like to see it. As the Assyrian invasion was closing on Jerusalem, Hezekiah and his army generals decided that it is necessary to block the water coming out of the City of David. We read,
It was Hezekiah who stopped the upper outlet of the waters of Gihon, and directed them to the west side of the City of David.
The old Canaanite tunnel was blocked, and the water stopped flowing into the king's gardens. Hezekiah diverted the spring water into a new underground tunnel that had been quarried into the heart of the mountain. Two groups of masons worked towards each other from both sides and met in the middle of the tunnel. This new tunnel enabled the water to flow from the Gihon spring to the pool of Siloam. The evidence of this ancient miracle of engineering was found inside the tunnel on the Siloam inscription. Today you can see a copy of the inscription inside the ancient tunnel of Hezekiah. So if you ever decide to visit Jerusalem, make sure you signed up on a tour that will take you walking from the City of David to the pool of Siloam, using the same tunnel that Hezekiah built. So far I mentioned Hezekiah construction projects that prepared Jerusalem for the confrontation with Assyria. However, to survive this invasion, Hezekiah needed something more than walls and a great military strategy. Assyria was not just another enemy of Judah. At the end of the 8th century, Assyria became the first true empire. Assyria inherited culture, science, and religion that developed in Babylon, but improved a military art that they invented. They were a force that no one could resist. Assyria conquered the northern kingdom of Israel, destroying its cities and deporting the 10 tribes of Israel to the foreign lands. Now, this unstoppable force was heading toward Judah to complete the destruction of the Jewish kingdom. Living in the times of Hezekiah, the people of Jerusalem had to be terrified of the news that Assyria is heading towards Jerusalem. On their triumphal march, the army of Sennacherib destroyed 46 fortified cities and approached the great city of Lachish. The brutality of the Assyrian army against the people of Lachish perhaps did reach Jerusalem's citizens. What would they hear? Nothing pleasant. Perhaps stories of mass murder, stories of cutting the limbs, noses, and ears of their captives, stories of people being skinned alive, beheaded, and stretched on torture machines, and of people mutilated bodies impaled on stakes. The fate of Lachish was very tragic indeed. Something that the prophet Isaiah foretold.
Now therefore, behold, the Lord is about to bring on them the strong and abundant waters of the Euphrates River, that is, the king of Assyria and all his glory, and it will rise over all its channels, and go over all its banks. Then it will sweep on into Judah, it will overflow and pass through, it will reach as far as the neck.
King Sennacherib is so proud of his demolition of Lachish that he orders a 12-meter-long relief describing all the horrors of this battle and put it in his palace in Nineveh. If you ever visit the British Museum of Art, you can see the Lachish reliefs that are well preserved. I had a chance to see them a few years ago, and even today, you can sense the brutality and pride of the Assyrian army. I can only imagine the horror of the people of Jerusalem, who must have thought that they are next. The very event of the siege of Jerusalem is well recorded in the Bible. The army of Assyria stands outside the Jerusalem walls, threatens Hezekiah, mocks the God of Israel, and warns the people of their painful death. Jerusalem army and its walls are no match for the war machine that conquered many cities. There seems no hope, and there is no place to escape. Hezekiah understands this well and turns to God as his last hope for survival. In the second book of Kings, chapter 19, we read,
It is true, Lord, the kings of Assyria have laid waste the nations and their lands, and have hurled their gods into the fire, for they were not gods, but only the work of human hands, wood and stone. So they have destroyed them. But now, Lord our God, please, save us from his hand, so that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone, Lord, our God.
The book of Kings describes that the God of Israel is not silent to Hezekiah's prayer and answers through the mouth of the prophet Isaiah. God answers directly to Sennacherib in those words.
And against whom have you raised your voice? Against the Holy One of Israel. Because of your raging against me, and because your complacency has come up to my ears, I will put my hook in your nose, and my bridle in your lips, and I will turn you back by the way by which you came.
The next day, the army of Sennacherib was destroyed. He is forced to return to Nineveh, where he is murdered in the temple of the pagan god Nisroch. For many years, the biblical story was regarded as a fairy tale in the Bible. However, in 1830, archaeologists in Iraq found the so-called Sennacherib's prism. On this hexagon prism that was found, the same expedition recorded in the Bible could be read in the Akkadian language. Regarding the Sennacherib expedition to Judah, Sennacherib records all the cities he conquered and demolished. But when he starts to describe Jerusalem's siege, we can see a sudden change of narrative. Instead of describing how he destroyed Jerusalem like the other cities in Judah, we read, Hezekiah himself, like a caged bird, I shut up in Jerusalem, his royal city. Of course, the proud leader did not write that his whole army got killed and he was forced to return. But at least he did not lie. He did not conquer Jerusalem. In the Sennacherib's prism, there is no explanation of why Jerusalem was not conquered. But the Bible says it was an angel sent by God that saved the city. This is truly a remarkable story. Once again, the Bible proves to be a reliable source and a witness of God's sovereignty, even over the most powerful people in the world. Sennacherib, who thought he was the king of the world, who humiliated many nations and their deities, now faced a force that cannot be mocked. Just one angel of the Lord destroyed his magnificent army. Instead of seeking the truth, Sennacherib turns back to his false gods and is murdered in a pagan temple. There is no Assyria today, but Israel is still a nation and a people of God. There are more important archaeological discoveries connected to the story of Hezekiah, but we will leave them for another episode. Thank you for your attention. I hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, I encourage you to comment. You can also subscribe to this channel to stay informed about the next monthly episodes on Jerusalem's history. You can also support me by clicking on the Join button on my channel main page. This will certainly help me to improve and create more presentations. Have a great day and see you soon.